If we were to pick the most common word among Christians today, it would undoubtedly be grace. It flows ceaselessly in the lyrics of worship songs, in the opening sentences of our prayers, and in the daily conversations of believers. We habitually say, "It is grace," when business goes according to plan, when our children get into their desired universities, or even when we are lucky enough to find a parking spot in a crowded lot. Of course, the attitude of giving thanks in all circumstances is precious. However, we must ask ourselves honestly, does this light grace we consume carry the same weight as the heavy grace the Lord bestowed by shedding His blood on the cross? Are we perhaps degrading grace into mere good luck when things go my way, or psychological comfort? Now, we need to purify this contaminated grace and restore it to the raw grace of which the Bible speaks. In this sense, I would like to introduce two old, yet unfamiliar stories that shatter our conventional wisdom.
The Paradox in Icy Waters, the choice of Dirk Willems.
Let us travel back in time to the winter of 1569 in the Netherlands, when the heat of the Reformation was intense. Dirk Willems, an Anabaptist, was imprisoned and awaiting execution. His only crime was following a conscience of faith not recognized by the mainstream church and state of the time. He made a rope to escape through a window and began to run across the frozen moat, the Hondegat, in the biting cold. Having lost much weight due to long imprisonment and starvation, Willems crossed the thin ice safely. However, the burly thief-catcher pursuing him was different. With a cracking sound, the ice broke, and the guard plunged into the freezing water. A scream for help rang out from behind. At this moment, modern rational thinking would have shouted to Willems, "This is God's help. God, who parted the Red Sea, has drowned your pursuer for you. Don't look back, run. You must live to continue spreading the gospel, right?" But Willems stopped, and he turned back. Without hesitation, he grabbed the hand of the enemy who sought his life and pulled him out of the icy water. The price was harsh. He was rearrested on the spot and shortly thereafter ended his life at the stake. He sacrificed his own life to save the life of his enemy. This was akin to a reenactment of Jesus Christ praying on the cross for those who crucified him.
Forgiveness before the gun, the shock of Amish grace.
If the story of Dirk Willems feels like a legend from the distant past, what about the tragedy that occurred in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, in 2006? An outsider named Charles Roberts intruded into a school in a peaceful Amish village, murdered 5 young girls, critically injured 5 others, and then committed suicide. It was a horrific crime. The entire nation was enraged, and the media discussed revenge and punishment. However, the Amish community, the victims, responded completely differently. On the afternoon of the incident, they proclaimed forgiveness for the perpetrator, Roberts. It was not just forgiveness in words. They attended the funeral to form a human wall, protecting the perpetrator's wife and children from media exposure. Furthermore, they delivered financial support to the killer's family, who had lost their breadwinner. This was an act that transcended ordinary ethics or morality. The world buzzed, calling it crazy or incomprehensible behavior. But to the Amish people, this was never a heroic act. They were simply practicing the grace shown by their spiritual ancestor, Dirk Willems, 400 years ago, and by Jesus 2,000 years ago.
The idol named cost-effectiveness. Why did they have to be failures?
The problem is that the majority of Christians today do not even know the name of Willems, and they regard the story of the Amish merely as a bizarre topic. Why have their stories become someone else's stories to us? The reason is that the modern church is captivated by the massive idol of cost-effectiveness. Dominated by the capitalist principle of efficiency, the church has become a group that calculates the return on investment ROI for every action. We tap on calculators even when we devote ourselves. If I endure this much, will that person change? If we invest the budget in this ministry, what fruit will we get? If I sacrifice here, God will reward me with greater blessings, right? From the perspective of this spiritual utilitarianism, Dirk Willems is a complete failure. He should have survived and fled to minister for another 30 years, evangelizing hundreds more. Wouldn't that have been a more productive and efficient choice? Perhaps if he had done so, his name would not have remained in history, and the influence of the grace he bestowed would have vanished. Although he died, the Amish believers who still practice the spirit of grace he showed remember him from a young age and strive to inherit his spirit. Yes, biblical grace mocks human calculation. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 verse 9 defines grace as though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor. The master bankrupting himself for the servant, giving even his own life. This is the grace the Bible speaks of. Christianity was built upon this holy waste. The problem is that modern Christianity, having lost the spirit of grace, ridicules Willem's death as futile and ignores the Amish forgiveness as a bizarre event.
Spectator Christians and the trap of othering.
We listen to the stories of Willems and the Amish and act as if we have watched an unrealistic movie. That's possible because he was a martyr like Willems. That's something only people in a closed community like the Amish can do. This othering is a very convenient defense mechanism that isolates us from the grace the cross demands. By classifying them as a special species, we try to exempt ourselves from the cost of discipleship we must practice in our lives. We merely consume grace as a touching story, not accepting it as a blade that pierces and transforms us. As Bonhoeffer warned, this is cheap grace. It is an attitude that desires forgiveness but dislikes repentance, desires heaven but refuses discipleship. The tragedy of the modern church arises not because we do not know the Bible, but because we have no intention of paying the responsibility and price that biblical grace demands.
The distortion of influence. The way of the cross versus the way of Rome.
The most serious problem is that as the church has lost the influence of grace, it tries to fill that void with worldly influence. We often say, "Let us reach the top to change the world." The logic is to exercise good influence by making a lot of money, rising to high positions, and increasing the size of the church. But look coldly. Is this the way of Jesus or the way of the Roman emperor? Rome conquered the world and established order through power. However, Jesus saved the world by emptying himself, by becoming low, and by dying. When the church possesses money and power, the world may envy or fear it, but it will never respect or be moved by it. The time when the world is shocked by the church is not when we pursue power just like them. It is when we forgive the unforgivable, when we willingly step back from a position where we could claim our rights, and when we walk out of our calculations to embrace loss. When the Amish community avoided cameras, refused interviews, and silently embraced the criminal's family, the whole world trembled before their powerlessness. This is the true influence of grace.
Recovering the lost wildness, back to the icy water.
Now we must choose. Will we remain in the safe and rational prison of cost-effective faith, or will we advance into the dangerous and wild field of grace? What the modern church has lost is not sophisticated programs or systems. We need the courage to be fools. We need that holy hesitation Dirk Willems showed before the icy water, that uncalculated, immediate obedience. I am not talking about grandiose martyrdom. It can start today in my home, at my workplace, in my church community. Logically, you are wrong, but for the sake of our relationship, I will yield. It is my legitimate benefit, but I will give it up for you. You hurt me, but I will pray for your restoration. When these small deaths gather, the church will regain a vitality that the world cannot withstand. Grace is not a stagnant lake, but a river that must flow. It is a river that is rough, unpredictable, and breaks down all dams of causality. Like Willems did, let us now dip our feet into that river.
Logos Global Academy currently streams in 11 languages and is expanding to over 20 languages to reach every corner of the globe. Please subscribe and become a member to empower this massive global mission. Thank you so much.